Back in 2007, Kara Kopetsky and Kylr Yust were in a relationship. They were on and off again, especially towards the end of her life. Kylr was highly jealous and obsessive over her. She received an order of protection against Kylr on April 30th, 2007, and he was served with the paperwork on May 1st, 2007. Kara was becoming concerned because of the escalating abuse, and she didn't know what Kylr was capable of. She wrote in her protection order, on December 6th, Kylr had a knife in his hand, threatening to slit her throat. Sometime in March, Kylr choked her, and around March 7th, he wouldn't let her leave her home. On April 28th, Kara was walking from her job at Popeyes, and Kylr forced her into his car after she refused to hang out with him. He later allowed her to get out in Grandview, Missouri. She went to school on May 4th, 2007 like any normal day. However, she would end up leaving early from Belton High School after asking Kylr to pick her up. Kylr would lie and say he wasn't with her that day, nor did he talk to her that day. But phone records showed differently. That day would be the last time anyone saw Kara alive. Searches went on for years, with no luck finding Kara. Fast forward to September 8th, 2016. Jessica Runions, her boyfriend, and Kylr Yust went to a party in Grandview, Missouri. Jessica's boyfriend left early and Jessica would end up staying. Jessica and Kylr left together around 11 p.m. on September 8th, 2016, in Jessica's black 2012 Equinox. Witnesses told police that Kylr was drinking heavily that night at the party. He was acting possessive over Jessica and aggressive towards others at the party. It was also said that Jessica and Kylr were seen arguing. Jessica would go missing that night after leaving with Kylr. On September 10th, 2016 at 1:41 a.m., the fire department is dispatched to a car on fire. That car would later be determined to belong to Jessica. Police received a phone call from Jessup Carter, Kylr's stepbrother, to tell them he was with Kylr, and Kylr admitted to strangling Jessica to death. Kylr told Jessup he drug her body into a wooded area and wanted Jessup's help burning her car. Jessup would admit to being with Kylr when Jessica's car was burned. Kylr would end up with flash burns all over his face and hands. Jessup drove Kylr to his home in Edwards, Missouri to heal from the burns, but let police know where Kylr could be found, his condition, and what Kylr told him. Kylr would be arrested at Jessup's house on September 11th, 2016 at 9:36 a.m. Kylr had scratches all over his face, burns to his face, arms, and hands. Kylr would be charged with burning Jessica's car, but hadn't been charged with her murder yet. 7 months goes by, and finally, a mushroom hunter found human remains on April 7th, 2017 near 203rd Street and Y Highway, just south of Belton. Then, a second set of remains were found the following day. These remains would be identified as Kara Kopetsky and Jessica Runions. On October 5th, 2017, Kylr would be charged for their deaths. His stepbrother, Jessup Carter, was arrested in July of 2018 for arson, unrelated to Jessica's car. He would have most likely been the star witness for the prosecution in Kylr's case, but he passed away in his cell while in jail on September 24th, 2018. Kylr went to trial on April 5th, 2021. The trial lasted approximately 2 weeks. Kylr's defense was, quote, "My brother Jessup did it," end quote. The jury didn't believe the claims, found Kylr guilty of voluntary manslaughter on Kara, and found him guilty of second-degree murder of Jessica. He was sentenced to 15 years for Kara and life for Jessica to run consecutive.
Yes.
Judge, it's been 14 years in Kara's case, and almost 5 years in Jessica's case, for us to get to this very moment right now. This very moment where we stand before you and ask for the defendant to finally be punished for stealing the lives of Kara and Jessica, for subjecting them to the pain and suffering that we know they went through, for putting their families through the pain and suffering that they went through. So as those girls rest together, and as the defendant sits over there smirking right now, we acknowledge to this court that this court has seen for the past 4 years that this man has never once taken responsibility for anything he did to either girl, or quite frankly, to any of the girls that he abused. He sits there and he smirks, Judge, and he is the same person that as he took this stand, he described putting in Rhonda Beckford and Jim Beckford's yard the signs about their daughter missing. He knew for all of those years exactly where Kara was, because he's the one that put her there. And he knew where Jessica was, because he's the one that put her there. So when he takes this stand and he spins his wheel and he tells a story about how his brother is the one that was responsible, we all know that that's not true, because Kylr Yust is not capable of telling the truth. And what's interesting, Judge, is, after he took the stand, the state took the opportunity to go back and look at every interview that the defendant had done, including interviews that he did with the media. And one that was particularly of interest was when he was being interviewed by a reporter named Russ Potasek. And Russ Potasek directly asks a younger Kylr Yust, what happened to Kara? And he stands there as the arrogant person that he is, and he says, I don't know. I don't know what happened to her. So let's just be clear that if his brother was the one that was actually responsible for this, there were opportunities for over 14 years for this man to come forward and give justice for his family. But we know that Jessica Carter wasn't responsible. He's just a scapegoat, because Kylr Yust thinks he's smart enough to take this stand and manipulate the jury. But it didn't work, Kylr. It didn't work.
Again.
The jury came back with the verdicts, finding him guilty of voluntary manslaughter for Kara's case and guilty of murder in the second degree for Jessica's case. And they sentenced him, as recommended, to the 15 years on Kara's case and life on Jessica's case. But the reality is, when you have a defendant like Kylr Yust, it becomes darn near impossible to find peace like that. And even, again, as he sits there smirking right now, Judge, it becomes impossible for the state to not address directly to him his lack of remorse, his failure to ever accept any responsibility for anything. And might I just point out to you something that was not lost on the state? When that defendant took the stand, Judge, he took the stand, and one of the first things that he said on direct exam was that he's an animal lover. And I know that this court remembers our pretrial conferences and the arguments that were made at that point, and the state was prohibited from talking to Kylr Yust about the charges he faced for killing kittens. So when that defendant takes a stand and says that he's an animal lover, that was exactly who Kylr Yust is he takes a stand, he smirks, and he knows he's trying to manipulate the situation. But the manipulation ends today. It ends today. Kylr Yust deserves every minute of every day of the rest of his life in the Department of Corrections. And just like Ms. Hastings said, we'll never stop fighting for you, Kylr. We as the state and all the victims in this courtroom will never stop fighting to keep you in prison for the rest of your life. I am making him to the court, and I'm also addressing the victim's family in the courtroom, Judge.
Right.
Actions that he will kill again. He has demonstrated that he is a danger to the community, and he flaunts that in the face of this community, time after time after time. And that time, Judge, ends today. It's the state's recommendation that the defendant be sentenced to the 15 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections for murdering Kara Kopetsky. It's the state's recommendation that the defendant be sentenced to life in the Missouri Department of Corrections for murdering Jessica Runions. And Judge, we ask that this court run those sentences consecutively. If there was ever a defendant that deserved to spend every minute of every day of that sentence in prison, it is this man right here.
Judge, we have stated our legal reasons for a new trial in this case, and we will be bringing those legal reasons to the Court of Appeals. And all I want to really say today here is that we ask the court to run these sentences concurrent, and that is because the jury in this case heard the evidence. There was much evidence, in fact, that they didn't hear, and based on what they heard, they knew that these sentences were parolable. They did not know that there is a minimum that has to be served on count 2, and that to run these sentences consecutive is contrary to what the jury intended, and in fact constitutes a type of judicial override, which is incorrect. That is all that we are asking, is that they be run concurrent. The court heard the evidence in this case. I'm not going to argue the facts of the case or anything that was presented in court any further. We just ask that these sentences be run concurrent.
No.
Sentence and judgment shouldn't be pronounced in this case?
No legal cause other than what we have stated in our motions that we have filed.
The court's reviewed the sentencing assessment report that was provided to the court in this case. Also has reviewed the extensive history in this case. The court's going to order a sentence of 15 years in the Missouri Department of Corrections on count 1 in this case for the voluntary manslaughter. On count 2, courts don't order life in the Department of Corrections in this case to run consecutive to count 1 in this matter. Mr. Yust, I need to ask you some questions about your, if you'll raise your right hand, I'll let you sit there, that's fine. You solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give in this call to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right. Have your attorneys done everything you asked? They done everything you asked them to do?
Yes, I'm aware that there's a Form 40 that I have the right to file, and at that time there will be counsel, post-conviction counsel assigned to me, and I have the right to discuss this with them at that time.
Okay. Have your attorneys done everything you got here? They done everything you asked?
I will discuss this with my post-conviction counsel only, not with you.
Okay. Now, this is your time to tell me about all this, so this is, I'm sure you've gotten advice. Is that what I'm...
I admire your attempts to foil my appeals, but no thank you, sir. I do not feel like discussing this.
So, have they done everything you asked them to do? Have you, did they refuse?
Are you my post-conviction counsel?
Did you...
Mr. Yust is not going to answer any more questions.
Well, I want to make sure he understands. I'm asking him now, so this is the time. So, have their attorneys refused to do anything you asked them to do?
I'm not going to answer any more questions. Thank you, sir.
All right. And have you had an opportunity to talk to them about your case? And again, you're indicating you're not going to respond to any of my questions. Have they refused to do anything you asked them to do? Have you had ample opportunity to talk to you about the case? I'm asking all these questions. I know you could hear me because you responded earlier, so I'm making sure that you understand I'm asking these questions in regards to your representation. Again, have you been able to talk to them about your case over the last, I think, 4 years?
What do you think?
Oh, I'm asking you that question. And then again, you understand that I'm asking these questions because this is the time in which we're getting to this. You understand that you do have a right to a Form 40, correct? Right? You know that you're going to have the Form 40 given to you today, correct? And you understand that I'm going to hand you a 2915 the Rule 2915 in this case. Additionally, I want to make sure that you understand and I make sure you're telling me you're not going to respond, but that's okay. I just need to know, and I'm putting it out there, you don't have to respond if you don't want to. You understand that your attorneys here today, they've represented you through the trial, and they've done what you asked them to do.
Moving on.